Let's start with the first controlled environment, which is me talking to Kathleen Moran.
Gosh, that could go on and on and on, couldn't it?
Start again, do it again. No, don't. Before we start, I have to make one thing very, very clear. I do actually have more outfits than this. I notice that this is what I'm wearing on the flags outside and on the programmes. I need you to know for my own peace of mind and sense of nobility that I have up to 3 other outfits other than this. This was just what was clean. It was this thing that smelt least this morning, but it's trifle whiffy now, I have to admit.
When you were 11, 12, and you won an award, I'm not going to sort of take you through your whole history, but did you feel that you were different? Were you bullied? Did you have to kind of fight for holding your own? Because sometimes, kids who are very imaginative, have a lot of passion, a lot of drive. I mean, sometimes actually they're told to shut up, get back in their box. Who do you think you are? All the rest of it. I mean, did that happen to you?
Well, yeah, the lucky thing that happened to me is that I was brought up by a very weird family and given a very weird life, which kind of, basically when I went to school till I was 11 and sort of constantly sort of exiled and bullied. We were just weird. We were the only hippies in Wolverhampton. We walked around in hand-crocheted ponchos and rainbow welly boots. And our packed lunch was, my parents decided they were going to give us muesli for a packed lunch instead of the jam sandwiches and an orange club that everybody else had. So, as a consequence, if you open a screwed-up jar of muesli in a state school in Wolverhampton in 1986, you will just have a whole room full of people go, "Muesli? Is that poosli?" And then you're kind of ruined. And also, we didn't have a television for a couple of years, so I didn't really know what was going on. So people would be talking about Duran Duran, and I'd be going, "But I love side 2 of Abbey Road by the Beatles. Can we not talk about that?" I didn't really know what was going on in the world, so I felt very odd. But there were 8 of us, and we were taught at home, and so we were all just odd together. And I sometimes think, over the last couple of years, I've sort of thought about why I am maybe slightly less scared or have become less scared to be weird or kind of find it a bit easier to write about things than maybe other people would. And I think a lot of it was that I wasn't in society. I had an easy deal. I mean, it meant I didn't have any friends, and I was so desperate to lose my virginity that I often looked at our family dog in a kind of, well, maybe we could come to some kind of arrangement here.
This is where the signers really come into their own, actually.
Yes. Oh, God, yeah, poor the sign people. I'm so sorry. Oh, God. We were talking about this earlier. They introduced themselves to me just before we came on stage, and I was like, they were like, kind of, "Have you got any weird words you might be saying that you want to run through?" I was like, well, could you do vag chat? Can you do ass hat? And then the best one was, can you do clit rock?
This is why we get our Arts Council grant, you understand. Yeah. But, okay, so you were, but in a sense what you're saying is that you kind of developed some level of, I wouldn't say fearlessness, because, people are always really, there is fear, or whatever you do, I think, but, you didn't necessarily know that you had to be as well behaved or certain norms didn't apply, so you could be more outlandish or more outrageous.
Well, I didn't have to deal with people. This is kind of one of the sort of sad, weird bonuses that I got from having a very weird childhood. I wasn't going out every day and being judged because we just didn't leave the house for 5 years. On the good side, that meant that I didn't know how weird I was. So by the time I went out into the world, I was fully had the helmet of just kind of complete, I was completely deluded as to, because all I did was watch musicals from the 1950s, and in those kind of, a sort of cheerful working class girl can sing her way out of any problem. And so, as a consequence, when I started being a music journalist at the age of 16, I turned up at Melody Maker, and they went, "Would you like a job?" And I went, "A job to work here? I would love to. I would really, really love to. I'll start with the walls and then the floors. That way, if I drip, And they stared at me, and I went, it's a line from Annie. It's the bit where Annie goes to Daddy Warbucks' house, and he's asking if he wants to be adopted, but she thinks he just wants to employ her as a cleaner. I'm parodying the notion that a working-class girl could have a job at a music paper and at the same time quoting a classic musical. Don't you get it? They didn't get it. No. So I was fully demented and deluded. So that was the good thing about being sectioned off from society. Did for me. I didn't realise how weird I was for a good 20 years. I was basically about 17 years into my marriage before my husband went, I just have to tell you, you are weird. I have kept that from you for a while, but you are quite strange. I just want you to know that.
And when did you start identifying with the weirdness of the fact that girls don't get a good enough deal, women might need a completely different set of possibilities for them in the world? When did you actually sort of start saying, I'm actually going to stand up for girls and women? Did that actually come as a decision, or you were just like that from the beginning?
Well, the key thing was this, and this was this again. Like, if anybody here wants to write or do something, or anybody here feels weird, which I suspect is all of you within those three wheelhouses. I spent so long thinking, I want to write TV shows, I want to write films, I want to write books, I want to write novels, but I haven't got any stories, because to me, a story was a teenage boy who finds he has some kind of magical power, such as being able to shoot webs out of his wrists, or discovering that he has the Force and has a lightsaber, and then he goes on a quest and he blows up the Death Star. And I was like, I don't have a story like that. I can't, these traditional narratives that are sort of set in the monomyth that come from kind of Greek and Roman mythology. I haven't got any stories like that at all. And it was 20 years of thinking that this was what was holding me back, and this was a lack. And then just suddenly, within a couple of weeks, having this sudden turnaround of like, no. What is the problem is that I don't have any stories to tell that have been told before. And it was this sudden switch from black and white into negative. Everything suddenly slipped around. It was like, okay, I can't write anything like what there's been done before, but there's all these things that haven't been written before. They're the things for me. And you realise that one of the things that holds women back time and time again in so many things that we do is people going, we don't do that. We don't do that. You can't do it like that. We don't do that. There aren't people like that. And all you ever need to do to that one sentence is add one word to it at the end, which is yet. We don't do it like that yet. There aren't women like that yet. That is not how the world is yet. And with that one word, everything changes. And I'm increasingly obsessed now. I just started off writing about feminism, and mainly from a sort of straight, white, sort of like assumed now middle class, cisgendered, able-bodied point of view, because I just knew about women and I knew about my world, and that was what I was writing about, and the working classes. And, being on Twitter and being involved in all these things and learning about all this stuff, I now just see a list of thousands of things that we don't see in the world every day. That you're just like, that's the work of the next 30 years, is to do this stuff. I was just talking to a friend last week, and she was like, you know what I've never seen? I'm starting to see a couple of strong black actresses out there now who get to kind of advise the president and have sex with him, or, and kind of, sort of like, be big boss women and stuff. But I've still never seen, for instance, two black teenage girls just being whimsical and dicking about. And they've never seen that. Never seen that anywhere. Why haven't I got that? And when you start writing a list of what you don't see, it's endless. And so whenever you think you've got a writer's block, or you don't have any story to tell, or you haven't got a column to write that week, or anything to blog about, or anything to talk about, or do stand-up, or whatever it is you want to do, just start writing a list of what you don't see. And it's when, as soon as you put your feminist glasses on, you're kind of like, for the first 2 years, you're like, it burns, it burns. The whole world is fucked. It's full of asshats. The man will crush me. We have so much work to do. And then you go, yeah, we have so much work to do, because work is, that's what culture is. That's where money is. People are making careers out of this stuff. I always like to say cheerfully to girls, you're led to believe that as a feminist campaigner, you're just going to starve in a garret and everyone's going to hate you. And, some people will hate you. And, sometimes the checks aren't that good, but I'm earning money and making friends. And also this whole thing that men won't fancy you if you're kind of funny and opinionated and a feminist. I have been beating off the cock with a stick for the last 3 years. Genuinely. It has been nuts. It's, there are bad things. We're going to talk about some of the harder things as well, and some of the things that will drag you down.
But that's not one of them.
Yes, but I'm an incorrigible optimist. So even though we will be talking about serious things and things that have been very difficult for us, like, I'm just like, this is, I want to tell you the good news, that there's never been a better time to be a woman, that it's an incredible time, that there's all these opportunities out there, that we are a culture that is enthralled to the new. And, going back to Hollywood, we're so screwed for straight white men to have another story and another obstacle to overcome in a big Hollywood blockbuster, that we're having to get that teenage kid bitten by a radioactive spider over and over and over again, just to give him a problem to come over and to overcome. But, in a culture that's enthralled to the new, the 52% of the world that aren't getting big Hollywood blockbusters made out of them all have stories to tell. People of colour have stories to tell. LGBT world, show me an 8-year-old kid who's just realised that, that they've been born in the body of a boy, they've been misaligned at birth, but, they've realised that they're going to be a girl. There's a story I want to watch. That's going to be incredible. No more spiders. I'm done with radioactive spiders for now. That's done that one.
Okay, and you talked about this moment, this road to Damascus moment over 2 weeks when you suddenly thought, you know what, I have loads of stories just that haven't been told yet. Did somebody? When did that happen? How did it happen?
Well, I'd been trying to be a feminist for a while, but no one was interested. There was there was a glossy women's magazine who asked me if I wanted to be a columnist. And I was like, yeah, and I'd like to write a monthly column about being a feminist, but it'll be funny. It'll be stuff like, if I want to be Harrison Ford's love slave and tied up to the bed and spanked, does that make me a feminist or not? If I actually, finger combing my pubic hair, does that make me a feminist or not a feminist? I want to do something. I think I can do something.
We'll be voting on that later on. Yeah.
And if anyone would like to show me their beautiful Wookiees later on, I'd be very happy to look at them and judge them. But I was like, I've been talking of that. Shazia split her trousers before she came out on stage. So I'm looking forward to Shazia coming out later. We may see more than we bargained for. She didn't want you to know that, but I've now told you that, sorry. So I was like, I've got a feeling we can make this into a monthly column. It'll be really funny, trust me. And they were like, we just couldn't have a column about feminism in this glossy women's magazine. And I was like, but it's a woman's magazine. I won't say, because the issues are really, they're lovely people, and and things have changed since then. But this was a point in 2006 where just no one wanted to know about feminism. The Spice Girls had come along, rebranded feminism as girl power, which just meant buying Spice Girls records. There were no bigger political aims there. It was simply choosing which one you like best. And so, 2006, feminism was dead in the water. So that was one turning point, kind of like being told that I couldn't write a column about feminism. Then me and my sister had written a sitcom, which is out next week on Channel 4. But at that point, we went to the BBC with it, and they went, we love it, but we've got a sitcom with women in it this year, and we've got a sitcom with women in it next year. So if you want to come back in 2 years' time, you can be the woman then. And I was just, this is insane bullshit. I can't believe we've got to a point where we're told there's only one funny woman in Britain a year. This is insane. There are more funny women in Britain in my house when my sister's around. This is nuts. So I went away and wrote How to Be a Woman. That's right. So then I went to my editor at the Times and said, I want to write a big piece about feminism. I want to make feminism cool again. I want to do a big piece about it and just go, this is completely crackers. Feminism is the only thing that we've ever had that means women being equal to men, and it now seems to be the most poisonous word you can say out there. It's even worse than saying you're a socialist. It's just, this is the worst word you can use. I will do a column about socialism later, but I'm going to start with feminism. And she went, tell me about this feature. What do you want to do? And I went, okay. And I started rattling off all the things I wanted to do in it. And I was 2 minutes into the pitch, and I went, Nicola, you know what? It's going to be a book. I've literally, there's too much. It won't be a feature. It'll be a book. And I went away and wrote How to Be a Woman in 5 months, literally just like that. Are you not going to do that? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that really hurt. Then I realised my keyboard was over here, and I started typing, and it all got a lot easier.
Okay, well, I mean, so what you're really saying is you got angry and excited.
Yeah, it wasn't anger. It was absolute panic, because at that point it was just like, oh my God, to be on Sicily for a moment, some other bitch is going to come up with this idea in a minute. I want to be first. Because it seemed so obvious to me that feminism would have to be the next thing. It had to be. It had just got to that point where it was the if you remember with ABBA, huge in the 1970s, and then kind of like just a little bit of the 80s, and then by the time you got to the end of the 80s, it was the least cool thing that you could say you were in. They were at the absolute trough of their career, like kind of, the end of the 80s, early 90s, to be into ABBA wasn't cool. And if you were clever at that point, you would have gone around and bought up as many ABBA records as you could and written Mamma Mia, because you would realise the cycle was about to come around, and having got to its nadir of not being cool, it would come back round and be cool again. And it was very clear to me that feminism was very much like ABBA at the end of the 80s at this point, and having reached the bottom of its cycle, it would have to come back round again, because there's something quite imperishable about the idea of women being equal to men. That's something we're going to keep coming back to. That seemed to be fairly simple.
Okay.